Welcome back, James MTG Biggie, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the first official tournament results that we have back since the banning of Sensei's Divining Top in Legacy. We're talking about the SCG Constructed Open from Louisville, Kentucky that just wrapped up this Sunday. And the day two metagame breakdown for Legacy kind of went where I assumed it would go. In the absence of miracles now in the format, the Delver decks kind of rose to the top of the standings. Grixis Delver, the most represented deck in Day 2 in Legacy, with 6 copies, followed by Storm with 4 copies. Kind of what I assumed would happen. Now that the big control deck is out of the format, people are going to try to do the turn 1, turn 2 combo thing with Storm. It's just going to happen. And on the flip side of that, now that there wasn't a main representative for a control deck in the format, Delver decks kind of rose up a bit to kind of take that role. It's more of a tempo-based deck, but they do have access to Force of Will, to Daze, stuff like that, and a lot of mana disruption, Wastelands, and a very disruptive deck to play in a very tempo-based deck. So it kind of has a decent matchup against decks like Storm, because they take them off their mana, they have access to Force of Will to be able to disrupt them going off on their combo, and can even board into Flusterstorm and other sorts of cards like that. Surgical Extraction, another big card in those sorts of games, where they can also clock you as well. The thing about Miracles is very, very slow kill with that deck, but a lot of control. Where Delver decks have a lot of control elements, not quite as many, but a very fast clock generally. Things like Young Pyromancer, Delver of Secrets, Gurmag Angler, and a lot of variations of the deck. So they're really putting a clock on you while disrupting your mana and your plan. So it makes it difficult for decks like Storm to really, really rise to the top, which is, I think, good. It's a positive thing in my opinion. Delver decks in general have always been around in Legacy, but now that they become kind of the most powerful variations of the Force of Will decks, I think it's good to keep the combo stuff in check. Other decks that showed up at Day 2, Lands had 2 copies in. Esper Deathblade, which is kind of surprising that people are shifting back to the Stoneforge Mystic decks. Sultai Delver was 2 copies. Basically pretty close to Grixis Delver, just slightly different variation of cards. 4-color Delver, which is like a Delver deck plus Deathrite Shaman, stuff like that. And then 2 copies of Burn, surprisingly, in Day 2. And then 1 copy each of Elves, Reanimator, Infect, Allurin, Sneak and Show, Colorless Eldrazi, Mono Red Sneak Attack, Blue-Black Control, Omnitel, and Sultai Control. The other decks that made the top 8 were the Mono Red Sneak Attack, the Colorless Eldrazi, and I believe an Omnitel deck was rounded out the top 8. Other than that, it was strictly Grixis Delver, Esper Delver, 4-color Delver, and I believe the Sultai Control deck. But very interesting to see where the format went. Death and Taxes not represented at all in this tournament. It feels like did not make Day 2, even if it was played Day 1, which there's no real way to tell why that is. I think maybe people were assuming that because people were trying to combo off so hard without Miracles in the format, and Miracles was a pretty good matchup for Death and Taxes, the numbers would come down a bit. But it's still too early to tell. Also, the results of a team-constructed format, not always best representative of how a format will shake out and how it will play. I mean, certain different factors come into play where if like a player is being carried by their standard and modern players and their legacy deck isn't performing as well, or their match wins with legacy and legacy aren't as good as standard and modern, the results are a little bit tainted in that manner. I still think legacy is the best format Magic has to offer. It is the most diverse and the most fun format if you really like things like casting really broken, efficient cards. It's just an interesting thing to see. Hopefully, we'll get to see more of a change and more of a shift going forward. I know GP Vegas is coming up, the first Grand Prix at the 3 Grand Prix Vegas, however that sounds. The first event at Grand Prix Vegas is the Legacy Grand Prix, and then Modern the day after, and then Standard the day after that. So it'll be interesting to see in a strictly Legacy Grand Prix how many different decks are represented and which ones do rise to the top. I do have a feeling that Delver is going to be a really good choice to play going forward. I personally would like to play some variation of it. Probably just blue-red Delver, because the deck sort of plays like a burn deck that has Force of Wills, which is something that I am all in for. But Legacy is still sweet. Miracle's Gone, it's just going to take some time for it to kind of fall back to a stable level where people aren't trying new stuff. I know that the prison sort of decks and the sneak attack decks in mono red, like Blood Moon base, Chalice of the Void decks, are probably going to be pretty decent as well. But those decks are a little glass cannon-y for my taste. If you don't get your prison locked down and then resolve your big spell, whether it be your sneak attack or a Chandra, a Torch of Defiance, or something like that, when you have to assemble that in order to win. Sometimes they just don't do that. They only get one or two piece, or one or the other piece of the puzzle. Briefly touching on Modern. Modern, not much different than I expected, with a small exception. Dredge was the most represented deck in Day 2, allegedly because Dredge has a good matchup against the Death Shadow decks. On camera, the bit that I saw didn't really tell the same story, but I'm sure on paper the matchup's pretty decent. And then the usual suspects, various Death Shadow decks, Eldrazi Tron represented, Affinity, and then down the list all the other modern decks that there are, because there's like 30 different viable decks in that format. But the one standout from that format was the Counters Company deck that they're calling it, which is the new Collected Company variant that people are building toward now, which also has like the same shenanigans the old deck had with the Viscera Seer, Kitchen Finks combo, and with Anafenza, so gaining infinite life sort of thing. But it now has another infinite combo, the white 2-drop, the Vizier of whatever the fuck it's called, and the 2-mana Mana Dork. I'm really bad with names with these cards in Modern. Basically, the white creature says creatures you control can't get +1/+1 counters, or if they would have a -1/-1 counter placed on them, you place one less instead. And the Mana Dork is you tap it for a mana, add a +1/+ or a -1/-1 counter to untap it. So that's an infinite loop where you can make infinite green mana, and then you get something like a Tireless Tracker, or a Duskwatch Recruiter, and you filter through your deck rapidly to get a Walking Ballista and just dome them for infinity. It also has several other ways to win the game and seemed really versatile for that sort of deck on camera. Definitely not like a fragile combo deck because it had so many angles of attack that it can combo from, and several different combos. I mean, if infinite Walking Ballistaing somebody to death doesn't work, it could just gain infinite life and just not be able to be killed. Deck seemed very good. I'm sure going forward, once people kind of fine-tune it and dial it into where it needs to be, it's going to be a really big player in Modern. I know a lot of people that are kind of excited for it, so it'll be cool to see where that goes and how out of control it gets, if at all, or how hated out it becomes. Standard, no big surprise. Not so much zombies this tournament. A lot of red-blue decks in the top 8. Blue-red control, Teamer Aetherworks decks, Teamer Tower decks showed up. Not that diverse, not that different, aside from zombies not being as represented or as big of a deal as everybody assumed. But again, these results are tainted and are dependent upon two teammates as well as your own results. So who knows? I just thought it was interesting looking at Legacy mostly, as this is the first real taste we're getting of the new format going forward. Either way, if you did watch the tournament, I'd like to know what you thought about it, how you thought Legacy and Modern played out, and where you think we're going from here moving forward. Are Delver decks going to be on everybody's radar, so will they be a bad choice going forward? Or is it just the way to go, play Legacy, sleeve up your Delvers, and go? I'm sticking with Death and Taxes, not only for financial reasons, obviously, but because I enjoy the deck and I think it has a pretty good Delver matchup. It's about as disruptive as Delver. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see. Also, the advantage of Death and Taxes against decks like Delver is counter spells are pretty bad against Death and Taxes for the most part. So we'll see. As soon as I have the opportunity to really plan a Legacy tournament, I was supposed to next week, not going to be able to make it, but I will let you know how I feel about the format even more from a standpoint of somebody that's actually been in it and has played some matches. Either way, please feel free to subscribe, like, drop a comment below, tell me what you think about Legacy or Modern or even Standard going forward. Team tournaments are super sweet. I think it's the best way to play Magic possible. You and two of your friends just kind of grinding it out and working together and helping each other. Who thought Magic would be more of a team sport? If this is the way it goes forward, I am down. I will play every opportunity I can in one of these tournaments. So I really would like to see that, more of that as well. Either way, I will talk to you again soon. And like I said, feel free to comment, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff, share, and let me know what you think. Bye.